Postural Alignment and the wellness paradigm. And before I go into wellness, I just thought we'd have a look at a couple of definitions. The first one is about health. So according to the World Health Organization, who said in 2019 that health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Quite a statement. Now I want to look at a definition of wellness. This definition comes from the Wisconsin Institute of Global Wellness, and they define wellness as the active pursuit of activities, choices and lifestyles that lead to a state of holistic health. So what I get from this is that health is a state of being and is the result, and wellness is a state of living and a result of choices that we make. So what we're going to look at here with the wellness paradigm is just briefly where CPA sits within that and the sort of wellness choices that perhaps we can make to improve our state of being, our state of health. So we have a pentagram that is the pictogram that we use to sort of define wellness with CPA. And in the middle of this, we have the innate intelligence. You can see a picture of it on your slide. The innate intelligence is our potential, it's what we're born with, it's our innate healing and our, as it says, innate intelligence. And this is manifested through the nervous system. Every cell throughout the body is connected to the innate intelligence via the nervous system. And then the nervous system is impacted physically by the bones, the muscles and the fascia. The fascia interact with the bones and the muscles interact with the bones and the fascia, and all of them interact with the nervous system and are feeding information back and forth and are in connection with the innate intelligence. And as we've seen with the image of Adam Cadman, the innate intelligence is connected to the universal intelligence, and we bring that down through the feet and into the earth, and we have our connection with the universal intelligence and the earth energies. And CPA on a deep level is about allowing the expression, the full expression of our innate intelligence through the nervous system, and we carry the work out of CPA using our plumb line assessment and alignment to have an effect on the bones, the muscles and the fascia that in turn has an effect on the nervous system. So it's a form of communication between the physical and the innate intelligence. So within the wellness paradigm, what we're wanting to see is that we can manifest the innate intelligence fully. And to do that, that involves some changes in 5 areas that we feel in Core Postural Alignment are actually important for dynamic, vibrant health. And if you have a look at the pentagram here, we have at the bottom nourishment, there's toxicity, there's rest, there's exercise, and there's our attitude to life. So we want to just look at, perhaps now I'll have a look at lifestyles. And if we think about our current lifestyle, particularly a Western style lifestyle, it's changed dramatically over the last 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. There have been huge changes in diet, in how we move, in our social structure, which has had quite an impact on our health. And quite often it means that we're not making necessarily choices, decisions in our life that work towards wellness. Plus, genetically, we haven't caught up with all these changes, because really, genetically, we're programmed for a more hunter-gatherer style lifestyle. So we need to make some wellness choices. And the wellness support for core postural alignment, we think that these are the areas that actually need addressing. How do we nourish ourselves? How do we rest and relax? What do we do to rest and relax? How much and what exercise or movement do we get? What's our attitude to life? And how toxic have we become? What we're aiming to do through this sort of wellness idea is to build a vitality to support the inner part of the pentagon. The muscles, the fascia, the bones, the nervous system, and the innate intelligence to support all of that. Now, we're not experts, and whatever we're saying here doesn't mean that you're going to be experts in any of these areas. So what I suggest is that you perhaps go away and do more study in some of them if you want to find out more, or if you need to refer to other professionals who have got a greater expertise in these areas. This is just really an overview, just to help you to put it into some sort of context of where we sit within the wellness paradigm, or of at least where we sit. So go back to nourishment. As we said, it's at the base of the pentagon. It sort of underpins everything, because without suitable nourishment, then we haven't got the nutrients that we need to build and repair healthy structures. Let's have a look at a definition of nourishment from the dictionary.com, which is to sustain with food or nutriment, to supply what is necessary for life, health and growth, and, interestingly, to cherish and foster. So nourishment is about nourishment on all levels: mind, body, heart, spirit. So what we're looking at here within core postural alignment is, yes, the nutriments or the food, but also how do we nourish ourselves on these other levels? How do we nourish our heart, our mind, and our spirit? So it's quite involved. And if we just look at the most basic of it, nutrition, nourishment for the body, we divide that into sort of three areas. There's basic nutrition, there's the harmony of nutrition, and there's supplementation. So if we're looking at the basic nutrition, that's like the raw materials that we need: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, minerals, vitamins, fibre, water, light, and oxygen. Let's not forget oxygen. So it's the basic nutrients of life, the things that we need to sustain a healthy physical body. The carbohydrates obviously give us energy source, sugars, starches. Proteins provide the building blocks coming from meat, other animal products, nuts, some grains and pulses. Mineral sources from the various plant sources that we eat, from some of the animal products that we eat. Fibre from the fruit and vegetables and the pulses. Fresh filtered water. Oxygen, hopefully from clean, fresh air. And fats from both animal and vegetable sources. And we have a saying here, it's 7 words, which sort of summarises really a basic approach to nutrition, to sort of diet, is what I'm trying to say. And that is, eat food, mainly plants, not too much. So there's quite a lot in there. Obviously, eat food, and what we mean by eat food is this the sort of food that your grandmother would recognise? Is it real food? Because one of the problems with our food today is that it is, in the Western sort of life, it's processed, over-processed. Our grandmother wouldn't recognise most of it. And quite often when you read the ingredient list, I don't recognise a lot of those chemicals that they mention on the ingredient list, and I'm sure you're probably very similar. So do we really know what we're ingesting when we're eating sort of a modern diet with all this processed food? And then how is it processed? What have they done to the fats? Just, what plastic containers have they put it in? What's leaching out of the plastic containers? How has it actually been grown? Now, this is interesting because we need on a daily basis, they reckon, 90 plus nutrients every day. That's made up mainly of minerals. So there's around 69, 70 minerals that we need on a daily basis, 13 vitamins, 8 amino acids, 2 essential fatty acids. These do vary a little bit. Some sources might just have 3 essential acids and more minerals, but that's roughly the sort of basic nutrition that we need on a daily basis. And how do we get these? Well, it depends how broad your diet is, because different fruits and vegetables have a different complement of minerals and vitamins and amino acids, depending on, where they're grown, what the soil's grown in, which part of the world they're grown. And they reckon that in order to maybe have these 90 nutrients on a daily basis, we need to be thinking about having 30 different foods. And that does sound a lot to most people. And especially if you mention this in a clinical session, just asking your recipients what their diet's like. And what you tend to find is that they have a very repetitive diet. So whenever they go to the shops, they're always just replacing what they've used on their shelves, which is basically wheat-based, more often than not quite meat-based, and not so many fruits and vegetables. So what we like to try and do is try and encourage people to expand the foods that they're eating so that they can aim towards getting these 30 different foods. Because quite often, and this has been my experience, they'll say they might have 8 different foods on a daily basis. So they're having a wheat-based cereal with some milk, then they're having a sandwich for lunch with maybe some cheese and a piece of lettuce. And then when they get home, they may have some pasta with some vegetables and another protein source. And that will be quite a typical diet of a lot of people. So it's very difficult when we're talking to people, when we say this, 30 different foods, it's a bit of a shock. So what we suggest is that perhaps they just increase the amount of fruit or vegetables they eat for a week. Maybe just introduce another 1 or 2 varieties. So it's not overpowering, because we don't want to overpower them. And it's better to ask people to introduce new things rather than to take away. So once they've got into the idea of trying to broaden their daily diet, then perhaps we can say maybe then substitute, let's say, wheat for rice. So instead of pasta, use rice, so that they start to really broaden their diet. And in actual fact, to get 30 different foods on a daily basis isn't as hard as it sounds. Because if you start your day with fruit, for example, you could have a fruit salad, make up a fruit salad, which you can store for a day or 2. And you could have like 6 different fruits in there. Then at lunchtime, if you're having a salad, you can have another 6, 8 ingredients in your salad. And you could even increase it further by introducing nuts and seeds. And then the same for your evening meal. You could, increase the amount of vegetables that you're having. Just generally eat different foods. The more colour, the better. And another basic nutrient which I haven't mentioned here, which might seem a bit odd, is sunlight. Because we all need sunlight to produce vitamin D, and it also has lots of other beneficial effects. So we're seeing that as a little bit of a nutrient that we need on a daily basis. So how is the food grown? So where we get our food from is important. We prefer organic when we can. And the reason for that is, number 1, it's lacking in a lot of pesticides when they're growing these organic foods. They don't use the same, if any, they don't use the same numbers, or if any, of pesticides, so it's less contaminated. Plus the food, the soil, is fertilized with broader fertilizers than what is commonly used in these mass farms, where they just replace 3 nutrients: potassium, phosphorus and nitrogen. They're the 3 that they generally replace. And the reason for that is because it encourages the crops to grow quickly and to look healthy. So the yield is very high and it grows quickly and it looks healthy. But it actually is lacking in some of the more trace minerals. The soil becomes depleted. If you think about the last 150 years, how our population has grown, how we've overused the land, it's become depleted. And in fact, the governments have been aware of this even since the 1930s. I think it was 1937 when there was a lot of testing done, and they found that the mineral content of the soil had started to deplete then. So what is it like now? So let's carry on with basic nutrition and think about how we actually eat. What foods are we eating in harmony with our body? So this is quite interesting. So what I mean by that is maybe how well do you chew? Are you shoving your food in and just gulping it down without actually chewing it well? So we're not starting the digestive process properly within the mouth, which is starting to release the nutrients. So starting to increase the amount of time that you're spending on eating is good. Then are you eating and focusing on that, or are you doing something else at the same time? Are you sitting at your office desk eating your cheese sandwich, not focusing on digestion whatsoever, on enjoying your food, but actually focusing on maybe a stressful activity that you're doing at work? So therefore your nervous system isn't geared up to digesting, it's geared up, to being in a stressful mode. So you're not going to be able to extract the nutrients from the food. And in fact, it may end up that you end up with indigestion because your body isn't geared up for digesting at that particular time. We also like the idea of perhaps eating plenty of raw foods, your fruit salad and your salads. And maybe this isn't a proportion that's been put out of eating 80% raw foods to 20% non-raw foods. And that is to give your body the opportunity to access all these minerals and vitamins and enzymes as well that we get from foods, from raw foods in particular. So there's other ideas about eating food for your type, for your blood type, for your body shape. There's lots of different diets which you can have a look at. So it's really something other than just eating. It's you are what you absorb, not just what you eat. I mean, you are what you eat is a term that's been bandied around for a long time. But actually, you can eat a lot of these foods, and if they're not suitable for you, because they're not the right type, eating too fast and maybe they're overcooked, then you're not going to be able to absorb the nutrients from the food. So in a way, it's a waste of time. It might satisfy your appetite, but you're not actually getting the nourishment from the food that we would like you to get. You can also look at how you combine foods. There's combination diets. One combination diet that's been around for a very long time and in fact suits a lot of people is not to mix your proteins and carbohydrates. So this nutrition in harmony can be quite a personal thing, because not everybody is suited to eating a diet that's suited for their blood type or the food combination diet, or for eating a lot of raw foods. Some people do need to eat a little bit to cook their foods a little before they eat them. So it's finding what suits you, allows you to absorb the nutrients from the food, enjoy your food, and use that in a process of becoming well. So as I've just said, the soils are not necessarily replenished with the nutrients. For example, if you live in a region that's very wet, the selenium tends to be washed out of the soil, so that food grown in that area might be quite deplete in selenium, as well as depleting other minerals. So sometimes, even though we're trying to get as much of our nutrition from food as possible, it can be very, very difficult. And perhaps a basic supplementation, and this is what I'm looking at now, is a good idea. And you have to remember, supplementation should never be an alternative to a healthy diet. The clue is in the name. It's just to supplement what you're already eating. So go all out for having a broad, healthy diet, but supplement if you feel like you just can't get all those nutrients. And I feel that the biggest area where we really need some sort of supplementation, because the soils have been so depleted, is perhaps with minerals, to get a good broad mineral supplement. And there are lots of them on the market. I suggest you sort of research into that. But there's lots of what they call colloidal type minerals, ionic type minerals in solution with fulvic acid, which from my research I think makes it quite accessible and absorbable. And it feels to me like that really does help to give me that complement of the 69, 70 minerals that we need on a daily basis. Another area where I've got sort of 5 areas here where we may need some supplementation. So minerals is one of them. And then fatty acids is another where perhaps we need to sort of try and rebalance our ratios of fats in our body, because of our diet over the last 50 years or so. We've become very high in omega-6 fatty acids and a bit deplete in omega-3. It's not so much always being depleted as the ratio is out of balance. So to supplement with fatty acids in the form of omega-3s, which are very good, very accessible from fish oils, there's a good way of trying to redress that ratio of the omega-3 to the omega-6s. Probiotics is another area of supplementation. Our modern lifestyles, this is all about our gut flora. What's our gut flora like? Do we have enough healthy bacteria in our gut? Our guts have been shown to be a powerhouse of our immune system, and affect our well-being hugely. And if there's an imbalance between the healthy bacteria and the not so healthy bacteria, then it sort of throws us off in lots of different ways, including our immune system and how our well-being generally, how we feel mentally and emotionally, and obviously it affects our digestion. So to try and redress this, it's quite useful to have foods that are high in healthy bacteria, which are fermented foods. So if you're from a culture where they do a lot of fermentation, then it's quite useful to eat the fermented foods, or to take a supplement of a broad number of different, a probiotic supplement with a high number of organisms and a broad range of organisms. There is a good book about this actually, which is by Natasha Campbell McBride, and the book's called Gut and Psychology Syndrome. It was published in 2010. It'll be on the slide if you want to sort of go and have a look at it. But she gives a wonderful explanation of what's going on in the gut, why we need these probiotics. She's actually looking at it from psychological changes that have happened to some people, and even learning difficulties like ADD and ADHD. So it's a really interesting book. You can learn a lot from that, which might not just help you, but might help your clients as well. Our gut flora have been assaulted in our modern life from the overuse of antibiotics. We have a bacterial infection, we go to see the GP, the MD, we have a prescription for an antibiotic, and the antibiotic works well at killing off the bacteria that's producing the infection. However, quite often they produce a lot, they kill off a lot more than the targeted infection. They kill off nearly all the bacteria. So we have to replenish them. So that our balance between healthy bacteria and non-healthy bacteria has really been skewed by our use of antibiotics. And not just our use of antibiotics, but our mother's use of antibiotics prior to us being born. It's had quite an impact on the sort of our gut biome, what we were actually born with. So probiotics, quite a big subject. Antioxidants is another area of supplementation which is very beneficial. We live in a life where there's a lot of pollution, a lot of what we call free radical activity, which brings about a lot of oxidation that's going on in the body as a result of oxidation going on. So we're being bombarded with pollution from the environment, the water, even the foods that we're eating. And to counteract this oxidation, this process of oxidation in the body, it's antioxidants are the ingredients that we need, that are substances that we need to deal with this. And the antioxidants are found in our most colourful of foods, all the berries and fruits and dark green leafy vegetables. The more colour there is in your diet, the more access to antioxidants. Herbs and spices are actually full of antioxidants. So if you can go back to expanding the number of foods that you have, if you can increase the number of highly colourful foods that you have in your food, you'll get the different array of antioxidants. Different foods provide you with the different antioxidants. Herbs and spices can give you antioxidants that work in a cascade effect as well. So using fresh herbs and spices in your foods will do that also. So we have, there's lots of antioxidant supplements out there. There's obviously the sort of more common antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, etc. But there's the more complex antioxidants, your OPCs, oligoproanthocyanins, there's curcumins, there's quercetin, there's a whole range of antioxidants. And I personally like to vary the antioxidants that I'm having and try and get most of them from my food, but I do like to supplement a little bit with some of these broader ranges of antioxidants. Coming back to antioxidants in fruit and vegetables, there is less vitamin C, for example, in the oranges now than there used to be, mainly because they pick fruit way too early from the tree. It hasn't had enough time to ripen on the tree. How many times do you bring fruit home from the supermarket and it says ripen at home? Well, that's a stupid thing to put on a carton of fruit, because really the fruit should be ripening on the tree or on the bush. It doesn't ripen at home, it goes bad at home. It might become soft, but it's not ripening, it's starting to ferment. So try and get foods that are picked when they're just ripe, ready to eat. Then they will have the maximum antioxidants present in them. And if you're not able to get much sunshine, where I live here, north of Birmingham in the United Kingdom, it rains a lot. There's a lot of cloud. There's not much opportunity for getting sunshine to my body. So there isn't a lot of opportunity for my body to make enough vitamin D. In fact, it has been stated that anybody living north of Birmingham here in the UK perhaps should be supplementing with vitamin D, and that would be vitamin D3, because of the lack of sunlight that we have. So if you live in an area where there is perhaps a lack of sunlight, or you don't want to go out into the sun for other reasons, because we have been indoctrinated by how bad the sun is for us, I believe. And of course there are skin cancers that we can get if we're sort of abusing our time in the sunshine. But actually to have some sunshine to produce our vitamin D is such a wonderful thing for us. We've evolved to live in this environment where we've got sunshine. We can't deny it. It's there. So perhaps we need to just allow ourselves to go outside and have just a little bit more time making our own vitamin D. But if we're not able to, then vitamin D is, they don't understand the full impact of vitamin D and what it does throughout the body, but they know that it is absolutely essential for a healthy life. So maybe look at some supplementation of vitamin D3, of which there are lots of different types, sublingual and tablet or capsule form. So that's like nourishment that we've just been looking at on the physical level, our muscles, our bones, our fascia. Let's have a look at nourishment of the heart. So as human beings, we're gregarious by nature. We love being with others. We're sociable beings. On the whole, I mean, some of us, me included, like to have time by themselves. But more often than not, as people, we like to be in groups, in communities. We need the love of others. So receive and lovingly receive the love of others, whether it's from your family or your bigger community or your hobby group, your church, wherever it may be. And also, nourishment of the heart is about our need for self-love as well. So perhaps find time to nourish your inner self. That's self-love. Perhaps find something other than people, a purpose to love, whether it's your church or volunteering for a group or looking after nature, whatever it might be, a love of something. Spend time understanding your own feelings, the feelings of others, and allow yourselves to nourish with this love. It can really, really, really change your biochemistry, this nourishment of the heart. It has been shown to change the biochemistry in a beautiful, positive way. Then there's nourishment of the mind, nourishing maybe the senses as well, nourishment of the nervous system. So nourishment of the senses. It's a term that I quite like, is finding beautiful things to look at. That's something that's a feast for your eyes. See the beauty maybe in everyday things. You know, you can look at your meal, your bowl of fruit there, and see the beauty in it. The colours, the textures, the flavours. Take time to look for the beauty. Nourish your senses, nourish your mind. Listen to beautiful sounds. Sounds of nature, whatever you consider to be a beautiful sound, but I'm just thinking of sounds of nature, water, whether it's the sounds of your children, the sound of other people, laughing. Just find beautiful sounds and allow that to penetrate your hearing deep within. And then the sense of touch as well, perhaps stroking a pet, give and receive hugs. We thrive with touch. People who are living in nursing homes who are starved of touch, wither without it. If they're allowed to be stroked or just for them to touch as well as receive touch, they can flourish and recover in huge strides. So it's all to do with how we're feeding the nervous system. And also it's also about expanding our awareness, our brain, the way our mind actually works. So stimulating and nourishing the mind, learning something new. We're going to look at that later on. Then nourishment of the spirit. Perhaps nourishing our notion of ourself, and that within we're a greater community. Maybe using meditation, group interactions to be a part of that bigger group on a spiritual level. The same with the community work, a spiritual connection with that community. And a question I've got written down here, which perhaps it would be good to sort of reflect on, is, are your actions consistent with your beliefs and values? That's an interesting question. And because when they are, what we find is that our spirit can grow. Be compassionate, caring, forgiving of ourselves first and others. So if we can be compassionate, caring and forgiving of ourselves, we are open and we can be the same with others. quite often we can actually be compassionate, caring and forgiving with others, but we're very hard on ourselves. So let's turn that around and think of ourselves and try to show that love and compassion to ourselves first and then others. And we will see ourselves grow and work towards this wellness, this bigger picture of health. Now, another area, that was just nourishment. Another area on the pentagram which I want to look at is toxicity. There's two areas here, toxicity in and toxicity getting it out. So what are we putting into our bodies, absorbing from our environment and homes? How much are we getting out via our processes of elimination? And the first area I want to look at is getting the toxicity out of the body, the physical level. So there's a pathway. The cell, during its metabolism, produces toxins. So we've got cellular toxins that need to pass out through the cell membrane into the lymph, then into the blood, and from the blood, toxins either go to the liver, kidneys, lungs, or the skin, and from the liver, it goes through the gallbladder, the bile, and exits via the bowel. Then from the blood to the kidneys and exits, and goes to the bladder and then exits. Then we've got blood to the lungs, exits, and then from blood to the skin, exits. So these pathways need to be free. And if they get blocked, for example, you get your bowel, you're constipated, you've got a bit of a blockage in your bowel, it backs up the toxicity back to the cell. So we're going to look at getting the toxicity out, not starting at the cell, but actually starting at the exit point. So we're going to work backwards. And what happens if we've got a blockage in this pathway and the toxins are not getting out is we do get this, like we say, the backup back into the cell. And what happens to the cell is the pH is altered. It becomes a little bit more acidic. So we have acidosis of the cell. And when this toxicity increases, we can start to get toxicity in a tissue, toxicity in an organ, toxicity of the body. So we're seeing degrees of acidosis occurring throughout either the cell, tissues, organs, or throughout the whole body, which can actually be measured. So what we want to do with getting the toxins out of your system is improve these pathways. So let's have a look at the bowel. So we want to improve to get a better evacuation out of the bowel of your toxins. So we want to perhaps increase the amount of fibre, so we get an increase in the peristalsis, the movement of the feces out of the bowel. We want to maybe decrease the transit time, and fibre in your food coming from your fruit and vegetables and pulses will decrease the transit time. Other things that may decrease the transit time are exercises, particularly stretching exercises. Some specific yoga exercises can just target the lower part of the body in the bowel area. Your posture is extremely important here as far as the positioning of the bowel. Where is it? Where are the attachments, the internal attachments, the tendons? What's the position of the pelvis? Does the posture mean that we've got like an architectural congestion of the bowel due to its position? How hydrated are we? I think I haven't mentioned water so far, so let's talk about water here. What's your level of hydration? Because if you are dehydrated, then your feces will be hard and difficult to pass. With complete hydration, full hydration, then your feces will be soft and malleable and easier for your body to push out through peristalsis. So getting your body hydrated can only have a positive impact on the movement of the bowel and that final evacuation of the toxins out via the feces. To be fully hydrated, it's roughly drinking about 1.5 litres, maybe up to 2 litres per day of clean, fresh water That's roughly about 4 pints of water on a daily basis. Depending on if you're having some sort of health conditions that mean that you can't drink that much water, then perhaps you don't. And in those cases, if you've got heart disease, kidney disease, maybe you probably need to go and get some check-up on with a healthcare professional on whether or not this is a good idea for you. So always be prepared to go and get some further advice if there's any doubts as to whether or not any of these things that we're suggesting are suitable. And remember, we're not training you to be experts, it's just to put things in some sort of perspective here. Something you can also do if you've got some constipation is you can massage your own tummy, lower abdominal area, starting around the umbilicus and just massage it in a clockwise direction in circles coming out, and that can sometimes help to with constipation. Then if we're just carrying on with the pathway from the blood, liver, gallbladder, bile down to the bowel, let's have a look at the gallbladder and bile. So the gallbladder produces bile, which helps to digest fats and to emulsify them. So a healthy gallbladder allows us to digest food and it absorbs fat-soluble vitamins, helps to lower cholesterol levels if it needs to, and reduces toxins in the body and helps to maintain bowel regularity. So it's all part of this process. So for a happy gallbladder, the gallbladder needs rest. So eat regularly, but not all the time. So give your body a rest, give the gallbladder a rest. Don't overeat. So just eat until you're full, but not too much. Our cultures, our Western cultures, if you look at the size of dinner plates now to 30 years ago, the increase in size now, our plates are so much bigger than what they used to be, dinner plates, 30 years ago. This shocked me recently because I saw what I thought was a side plate, a plate that you might have just a little bit of salad on at the side of your dinner from 30 years ago. And actually that was the dinner plate. And that was not uncommon for dinner plates to be that size then, the size of a side plate. So what I got from that was, wow, we are just generally overeating. If we could reduce the amount that we're eating, reduce the load on our systems, and here the gallbladder, then they perhaps might function better. They're just not having that opportunity to rest. So high fibre diet and include lots of dark leafy vegetables are great for the gallbladder, and avoiding high fat processed foods and not having too much saturated fat. Increase the good fats though. So if you're going to have fats in your diet, which I do suggest that you do, have like the olive oil, nuts and seed oils, coconut oils, and reduce you can obviously still eat meat and fish with some saturated fats in there, but try to have a broader range of fats. Increase the good fats. Most people need to do that. And also reduce the sugars and carbohydrates. The main thing is, though, we've already talked about constipation in the bowel, but avoid constipation. So if we're going backwards along this pathway, the liver. The liver is a huge filtration system. It's the primary filtration system, converting toxins into waste products. So we can see here immediately how important this is for our elimination processes, for our wellness. So it cleanses the blood and metabolizes nutrients and medications, provides the body with some of its most important proteins. So what we need to do is to protect the liver via avoiding excessive alcohol, so we're not producing too many toxins in the liver. If we try and keep our weight under control, weight gain, significant weight gain, increases fat deposits in the liver, so it affects the functioning of the liver. There's so many pathways that occur, chemical pathways that occur in the liver, that it can just affect the function of one of them. Eat a diet with your fruit, veg, your good fats, etc. There's a theme here, isn't there? nuts, seeds, avocados, eggs, avoiding sugars, particularly like fructose and sucrose. And maybe what you need to be doing here is checking the number of grams of sugar in the foods that you're eating, and obviously go for the lower grams of sugar. Avoid trans fats and hydrogenated fats as much as you possibly can. Exercise is good for the liver too. Increases the blood supply to the liver so that it can function better. So that was that first pathway that we were just looking at, from cell lymph blood, liver, gallbladder, bile and bowel. Let's just have a quick look at the kidneys and the bladder. Let's start with the bladder. Healthy bladders, they're not often talked about, but it is obviously an exit route for lots of waste products and toxins. If you have healthy kidney, fine drinking that 1.5 litres to 2 litres or 4 pints of water today. But like I've said, if you have any kidney failure or heart disease, you may need to moderate this, so go and get some advice. For the bladder, it's good to limit your stimulants like caffeine and alcohol, so perhaps don't drink as many coffees or sodas that contain a lot of caffeine. For the bladder, again, we want to avoid constipation. And something that's really good for strengthening the bladder are the pelvic floor exercises, which you can find out about online, but they're very good for strengthening the bladder. When we're urinating, urinate often and fully empty the bladder. Posture, again, can affect the functioning of the bladder because of its position. If we've got a pelvic tilt, or we've got too much weight at the front, so we've got a lot of visceroptosis, so everything's being pulled down because of forces of gravity. If we take one step further and look at the kidneys flush out toxins, filter the blood, and create urine, removing nitrogen waste products. The function of the kidneys are really important for our acid-alkali balance. Again, hydration is really important here. The urine ideally should be like a straw colour. So if it's too dark, then you want to be increasing more water. You don't want to be drinking too much so that the kidneys are working overtime. Kidney-friendly foods include a low sugar, low sodium diet. That means like avoiding table salt, which is just sodium chloride. Having some sea salt or rock salt is actually very good. Parsley is a good herb for the kidneys. A good tip here that an acupuncturist gave to me 25 years ago was keep your feet warm. That really helps the functioning of the kidneys, believe it or not. So we need plenty of rest to help to nourish the kidneys. So looking at detoxification from the blood to the lungs, i.e. getting rid of carbon dioxide out of the body. So the lungs obviously are the major organ of excretion for gaseous and volatile substances. This helps getting rid of the carbon dioxide through our breathing, helps to maintain the acid-alkali balance as well. So what we want to do to keep the functioning of the lungs and to keep the lungs healthy is try and avoid indoor and outdoor pollutants as much as possible as we can do. Avoid smoking and even secondhand smoke. Another tip is having good oral hygiene. There's a link between the health of the mouth and the health, just your health full stop. Exercise, actually, cardiovascular exercise is going to increase your lung capacity and obviously therefore increase the excretion of carbon dioxide. The lungs will heal wonderfully if you stop smoking. They have this wonderful ability to self-heal. And foods that will help the lungs are your antioxidant-rich foods. Maybe to improve the air indoors, have some plants like your peace lily, aloe vera, spider plants can help to cleanse the air as well. Now, lungs will respond very well to a high antioxidant diet, so eating lots of your colourful fruits and vegetables again. And obviously, maybe it does go without saying, I'm not sure, but deep diaphragmatic breathing really will help excretion of toxins over the lungs. And as we've already seen on the course, the posture can have quite an impact on the functioning of the lungs. So if we can help people to improve their posture, particularly it's the forward head posture, if that can be reduced, it can increase the lung capacity hugely. So, skin. Skin, perhaps people forget that we excrete over the skin, but it's the largest excretory organ of the body. It's the largest organ in the body, and we excrete excess salts via the sweat over the body. So how can we help this? Perhaps we're used to putting a lot of body products on us, so we just have to be careful that we're not suffocating the body, particularly underarms, that we're not suffocating the glands there so that they can't sweat. And a deodorant is good, but maybe not an antiperspirant. I mean, that's what we should be doing, is perspiring in our underarms, getting rid of these toxins across the skin. And to help to improve the function of the skin, to remove dead cells and improve the circulation to the skin so that the toxins can get to the skin, why not try some simple skin brushing? Just with a skin brush, circular movements from the hand up the arms to the heart, from the feet up the legs, the body, all towards the heart to improve the circulation, and gets rid of the dead cells as well, and then the body can perhaps sweat a bit more. Smoking, by the way, can narrow the tiny blood vessels in the outermost layers of the skin, and therefore that can sort of deplete oxygen and nutrients and the body's ability to sort of be able to get rid of the toxins even more. So that's been looking at how we can get toxins out of the body from the sort of after it's gone into the blood. Let's have a look now at how we can improve the blood. So that obviously the blood delivers oxygen and nutrients to every cell of your body and transports waste products to the various organs of elimination, as we've just seen. So poor circulation results in this process being hindered. So how can we help that? Perhaps get the blood pumping with exercise, but don't overexert. Just get more blood moving around the body. We want to be hydrated to keep the right consistency of the blood so it's not too thick. We've talked about brushing, dry the skin, so that sort of helps to improve the circulation. But reducing stress can really help the blood flow. That can have the stress throughout the body can have a big impact on the the walls of the arteries and veins, etc. Stretch to increase blood flow to the organs. Tai Chi, yoga, Pilates, just general movement. And blood flow throughout the body is improved by our posture. So we don't want to become congested because we're slumped, so the blood flow down to the legs is being impaired. So what we do with CPA and allowing people to have a more upright, physiological upright posture really does improve the blood flow. I mean, you can go and have tests to have your blood analysed, but actually just following some simple tips here is probably enough as far as we're concerned here with wellness and CPA, for just getting the blood flowing more so that we can get those toxins delivered to the organs. Then before we've got the blood, we've got the lymph, which is a very expansive system for clearing waste from every cell and helps to regulate the immune system. It's a huge system, a very, very important system for getting that waste out from every cell. So it must flow freely to stop the build-up in the cells. And lymph doesn't have its own transport system. It's transported via breathing and other muscle movements. So movements of the body encourages that lymphatic flow throughout the body. And it has various filtration points throughout various points of the body. A lot of it is actually intertwined with the gastrointestinal tract. So if we're sitting all day slumped, then that really does affect how the lymph works. We need to be constantly moving. In fact, when I'm sitting, I have chairs like a ball chair or a wobble cushion on top of that. It's called dynamic seating, so that you're not fixed in one position, so that you're constantly moving even when you're sitting, which really does allow a lot of the lymph to carry on flowing as well as the blood. So it's essential, as we can see, because if we don't get the toxins out of the cells and into the lymph, and then from the lymph into the blood, it's absolutely essential to keep this clear, to keep the toxins, keep them going in the right direction towards exit. And lymph is around 95% water. So to keep that fully hydrated, maybe keep sipping warm water during the day. Anti-inflammatory antioxidants are really good for keeping the integrity of the lymphatic system. Another great exercise for the lymphatic system is rebounding on those very small trampolines. I don't know if you've seen those, but you can buy just mini trampolines to have indoors, and you can just walk on them, and the anti-gravity effect of them, or you even bounce on them if you feel confident, but the anti-gravity effect gets the lymph flowing. And something which we've already mentioned a couple of times, which is absolutely wonderful for the lymphatic system, is the dry brushing of the body. And ideally in the morning before, I'm assuming you have a shower in the morning, and ideally before you get going in the morning, just give your body that dry brush, get the toxins out of your system. And if you want, it sounds a bit gross, but after that, after dry brushing, you can just wipe the skin with a little face towel. If you do that for a couple of days and smell it, then you'll realise how much toxins are released over the skin and how much the lymph is dumping it. So lastly, but very, very importantly, how do we get the toxins out of the cell to start off with? So we've said, if any part of that pathway from the exit back up to the cell is blocked, then we start to get toxicity in the cell. So the quality of a person's health is determined by the level of health of all the cells that make up that person. So every single cell is important. Every single cell needs to be dumping its toxins. A lack of a nutrient or a buildup of toxins leads to some form of cellular dysfunction. And if we multiply this millions of times, we can have dysfunction of tissues and then organs. So it's really, really vital that we have, as much as possible, cellular integrity and cleanliness. So all cells are surrounded by a membrane that's composed, of fats and proteins. So we need to get these waste products across the cell membrane. Water, oxygen and carbon dioxide just diffuse across the cell membranes, but other substances need to be transported. So in order for them to be transported, we need a healthy cell membrane. We need the fats and the proteins within the cell membrane to be healthy and of the right consistency. So how can we improve our cell membranes? It's eating the right healthy fats, a variety of them, your olive oil, your coconut oil, nuts and seeds, etc. Anti-inflammatory foods, because the cells do respond to the inflammatory response. Sleep is really important for the health of a cell, so that it can start to have for the repair function, so that repair can happen while we're sleeping. And again, hydration. We don't want the cells to be dehydrate. They shrink, they change shape. So we want them to be fully hydrated, so they're nice and round, so you've got a complete cell membrane. You've got the most surface area for the water, oxygen and carbon dioxide in particular to pass across. And then with everything else that we talked about here, the healthy fats mean that the transport system is working as well as it can do. The minerals are very important for that transport system too. So that's getting the toxins out of the body. So it's involved, and there's different things we can do to help. And what I suggest is you just try one of them and see if it improves your level of health, the way you're thinking, feeling. So we want to think about toxins that are coming in. Where are they coming in from? We've already mentioned air, water, foods, our homes, everywhere really. And then we've got our personal care products, our household cleaners. There's just so many ways that all these toxins get into our system. And the world, as it keeps being said on TV, we're killing it off with all this toxicity that we're producing. And not only that, we're killing ourselves off. We're making it so difficult for us to have a state of good health. So in this wellness sort of paradigm, we have to perhaps look at how we can reduce how many toxins we're actually taking in. And here's some staggering statistics. Okay, more than 12,000 chemicals are approved for use in US cosmetics and personal care industry. But since the 1930s, only 9 chemicals have been banned from use. Here's another one. The average woman uses 12 products per day. And a 1989 study by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health in the United States showed that of 2,983 chemicals in personal care products, a staggering 884 were known to be toxic, and 778 of these to be acutely toxic. One final one, probably depressing you. 2003, the World Wildlife Fund for Nature found as many as 70 different chemicals in the blood of UK citizens. Average was 27, and even in babies had as many as 20. So, it's difficult to get all these out of the body. We're getting to a state of toxic overload. So the best thing is not to get them there in the beginning. So the more we can reduce our exposure to these chemicals, personal care products, go online, find lists of what they are, what you need to try and perhaps avoid. And then think about our homes. They're in the carpets, the paints that we use. Try and think of less toxic alternatives when you perhaps refurbishing your home, when you're buying your next tub of body products. Try and get the less toxic version. It can be done. I've been looking into this since the mid-1980s, and since the mid-1980s I have had a policy of buying toxic-free, paraben-free and other toxin-free products that we use in the bathroom, in our, for household cleaners, and I use on my body as well. And I am sure it has helped me at a cellular level to be less toxic. So, toxicity in. Perhaps we'll need a bit of, it takes some time to actually deal with that. I mean, you don't want to be just throwing everything out your cupboards. You just replace things as and when, unless you really think, my God, I've got to do something really now about that. Sadly, our environments have become very toxic. They reckon the environment inside the home can be much more toxic than the environment outside the home. So that's something to think about. So another area of our wellness paradigm here and on the pentagram is rest. And you'll have heard us say this before, but rest leads to restoration. A restoration on all different levels. So it affects the way we look, feel and perform. So we're looking for rest to help our physical, mental, emotional and spiritual self. Now we have 24 hours in a day. Let's say we work on average 8 hours a day. So there's 16 hours a day when there's opportunity for some form of rest. So rest can be active or it can be passive. So let's just have a look at passive rest. So mainly sleep, basically. So during sleep, the ideal sort of average amount of hours sleep we should be aiming towards about 8 hours. More for young children and teenagers, but adults generally around about 7 to 8 hours per day. And if we can get this number of hours of sleep each day, that will determine how productive the other 16 hours are. what happens during our rest and sleep is that we're stimulating our parasympathetic tone, which means our body will go into a state of repair, memory consolidation, it's not something that's mentioned a lot, and hormonal balancing. So it's important not just on a physical level, but how we consolidate what we've learned through the day, our experiences during the day, how we deal with all the emotions that have gone on during the day. We're wanting to balance our endocrine system so that we're ready for the next 24 hours. So sleep, the first part of our rest, passive. Then we can have a look at the other 8 hours. And it's sort of looking for perhaps relaxation, forms of hobbies that take you out of your work mode, that get you out of that sympathetic tone that you'll have been in probably with work. Then maybe you've been taking the kids to school and that's not gone well. So you'll have had a lot of different sympathetic onslaughts. So we want to sort of get into this parasympathetic, get our minds out of this stress mode and into our creativity, learning, relaxation mode, stimulating our cerebellum with hobbies, exercises. So it's perhaps, if we could, in an ideal world, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of relaxation, hobbies, 8 hours of sleep. So look at doing your meditation, your various physical hobbies, including exercise. Gives the brain to recover and rejuvenate. It allows the brain to be more plastic as well, because we're learning new things perhaps. And a 2009 study showed that the more time spent on leisure activities correlated with lower blood pressure, depression and stress, and overall better psychological and physical functioning. It's all about this balance between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic tone. So this is here where this part of the pentagram does have quite an impact on that nervous system. So in native cultures, they tend to be in that sympathetic tone for maybe about 30%, let's say a third of the time, 8 hours of work, etc. And then for the rest of the time, they're in the parasympathetic, relaxing under the tree, chilling out with family and resting, bonding with the community mode. So this area of wellness is really overlooked and isn't given enough importance. And it's, I suppose, in a way, it's sort of reflection of where we've got to with our lives, because a lot of people have to have more than one job to make ends meet. There's just too many demands on us. But when you can, try and look at your timetable, find some time for you, for getting out of that sympathetic tone. And that's what we're trying to help our recipients do as well, is to sort of try and educate them to get into this parasympathetic tone so that they can heal, they can regenerate, they can grow in different ways. So another area on the pentagram is exercise or movement. Movement is just as good a word here, because we are designed to move. If you look at the joints, they're designed to be moving in different planes on a very regular basis. They don't respond to inactivity very well, these joints within our body. In fact, it has been said if we're sitting for 3 hours or more in a day, then we're starting to build up restrictions within our joints, which over time can lead to adhesions. So movement has also been defined as a nutrient for the brain, particularly within the spine. So moving the spine through the different planes sends a charge, up to the brain, charging the brain up and you're becoming more alert. So if you've been sitting for too long, sitting at your computer, working too long, thinking too long, you're stuck. If you get up and walk around, you can sometimes have the answer to a problem that's been bothering you. You've suddenly freed up something within the brain. You've freed up your spine as well. It's just sent up that charge to the brain to regenerate it, get it going again. So what we have to think about is the exercise. Is it the right type for you, for your level of health, for your body type, and for your age? Because quite often people are exercising in maybe the wrong way for them. They're pushing themselves too hard. And this again is another where 80% rule comes in. So just do up to 80% of what you're capable with exercise. Save 20%. Don't do the full 100% and push yourself so you're at your absolute limit. Save 20%. Because each time you do that exercise, even at the 80% of what you're capable, you will keep getting better, but you won't overdo it. You won't put yourself in a state where you might have some injury and where it's very difficult to recover from. You might put yourself into some sort of oxygen debt because you're overdoing it. So perhaps just avoid doing that. And if you think about babies, let's have a think about them. They're constantly moving. Because what's this movement doing? It's developing their brain. The more movement they have, the more optimum brain development they will have. And sadly, in less than 2 generations, physical activity has dropped by 20% here in the UK, 30% in the US, and in China, it has dropped by 45% in just 1 generation. So around the world, what we're seeing is more and more inactivity, which is leading to all sorts of problems, not just with joints and physical well-being, but it's affecting our mental well-being, our emotional well-being, and maybe our spiritual well-being as well. So it's part of this bigger wellness picture. So the exercise obviously strengthens and tones the systems of the body. Particularly, it can be cardiovascular and muscular, the obvious ones that we would say it tones. But also, it can help to tone the circulatory system by increasing the flexibility within the vessel walls. And the way we can do that type of exercise that's good for increasing the flexibility of the vessel walls is hot and cold showers. That's a good exercise, but for your circulatory system. So exercise can be not just running, walking, swimming, but things like this. The respiratory system, a good form of exercise for the respiratory system, deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing exercises, expands the lung capacity, helps the intercostal muscles to expand, can help change the position of the rib cage. Great for the respiratory health. How to improve the digestive system, maybe the yoga, and maybe as we mentioned earlier, the gentle massaging. How can we exercise our nervous system? Perhaps learning a new language, a new skill, increasing our neuroplasticity. This is a term that's gaining more and more interest at the moment, and it's how we deal with situations, because we're creatures of habit. So if you're driving to work, you might always go on the same route. Why not try and find a different route? And what it leads to is neuroplasticity. So we've got our brains, they're thinking of our brain as more plastic-like, and so we can mould it. And the more new things that we do, the more plasticity there is in there, which is great for when we get older, so that we can avoid some of the illnesses in older age. And just generally, Tai Chi and things can improve coordination of body parts. So we're aware, we're focusing on where one part of our body is in relation to another, and it just improves that coordination. So exercise, apart from just general exercise that you're aware of, we want to think about exercising the various systems as well. So the final area on the pentagon we've put down as attitude. So what we're looking at here is our outlook on life, basically. Our mental attitude, emotional attitude, our spiritual attitude. So our mental attitude, how we can improve our mental attitude, what steps can we take along this wellness path to having a more healthy mental outlook. Perhaps creating mentally stimulating activities, as we've just said, challenging our minds rather than becoming fixed and entrenched, this neuroplasticity. maybe, and I do this sometimes, you're worrying about something, not taking action about it. Why not change that? Why not start to think of appropriate courses of action way before it really takes over you? And one of the things that we notice in clinic is, when we're discussing about their outlooks on life, is do they have a sense of self-value? Are they worth making these changes in their nutrition, their exercise, just general changes along the wellness path? Are they worth it? And quite often people don't feel that they are. It's that self-love. Maybe we need to encourage them to sort of think of different ways and perhaps refer out to somebody who can help them to feel that they are worth this effort. And sometimes just making some of the physical changes, like with diet, can help them to feel like, well, yeah, that's great. I can do that. I am worth that. I can do a bit more. So we're just helping them with just tiny steps along, not just on a physical level, but on a sort of mental, emotional level as well. So if we're looking at their sort of emotional attitude, it's a sort of awareness sometimes and acceptance of your feelings, rather than just burying them, acknowledging them, becoming aware and accepting them. And if you can, doing something about them, changing them. How positive and enthusiastic are you or your recipients feeling about life, or are there feelings of lack? And maybe if they have an illness, do they deserve that illness? Some people feel that they do. Some people are really, really attached to their illnesses. It gives them some form of identity. So it's allowing them to find something else that they can identify with. And that's perhaps the work of another healthcare practitioner. But we can actually start the process, and then maybe they can see that, yes, there's something I need to do about this, and it might be in a group somewhere, or it might be actually seeking the help of somebody like a psychotherapist, because we're not everything for everybody, but what we are is perhaps a portal for allowing people to see areas in their lives that maybe they could have greater support once they've done some of the groundwork. It's obviously, this takes time, and the wellness program is over a period of time. It's usually, I reckon, it takes about 2 years for people to get back to a state of wellness. If they've come in to us with some sort of condition and it's been going on for a while and they've been under heavy sympathetic load for a long time, so they've got a lot of wear and tear going on, then I reckon it can take a good sort of 2 years of wellness, being on the wellness path to a state of much better health. And after that sort of length of time, you find people saying to you, phew, I feel a bit like my old self. And that's what we're trying to help people to do, to get back to their own self. So an area of their lives that a lot of people don't spend much time actually thinking about is their spiritual life and their spiritual attitude to life. But when we think about spirit and what it's derived from, the Latin words spiritus, which means breath, courage, vigour or soul, and the word spira, meaning to breathe. So breathing courage and vigour into the soul, whatever that is. So 5 characteristics of spirituality generally include, when we're looking at our spiritual meaning of life, is our meaning, value. Are we into any existence or experience beyond the normal or physical level, which is called transcendence, connection and growth. So our spiritual well-being is the ability to experience and integrate meaning and purpose in your life through the connectedness with yourself, others, the environment, nature, a power greater than yourself. It could be in art, it could be in music, it could be in all sorts of other ways, but it's this connectedness. And it is such a big aspect of our overall health, our search for meaning and purpose. And I suppose if we're looking at what our beliefs and values are, and it might be a good process to think about what your beliefs and values are, and are you living a life that satisfies your belief and values? So wellness is such a big subject. I'm sure you knew that at the beginning. But hopefully after this, you feel like, yeah, it is. It's a really big subject. And it's as we said right at the beginning, it's the active pursuit of activities, choices, and lifestyles that lead to a state of holistic health. And that's what we're aiming to help people to do, to make those choices, those lifestyle choices, so that they feel in a greater state of health. And whilst it's going to be maybe difficult to fulfill completely, so we've got a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, we know that we are working along the journey, along the path towards that. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you.